James Harden's trade to the Brooklyn Nets marked the end of an era for the Houston Rockets. Following an off-season in which the head coach for the previous 4 seasons, Mike D'Antoni, moved on, and the franchise's influential general manager, Daryl Morey, also left after 13 years. Harden's 8-year spell in particular was one in which the Rockets challenged the very way basketball was played. It was driven by the analytics trailblazer Morey, putting a premium on free throws, shots at the rim and three-pointers, and eschewing mid-ranges. For the 8 full seasons with Harden, Houston led the league in threes attempted 7 times, and was second in 2015-16 when Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors went nuclear. It was cold, calculated and even cynical at times, and no player typified that like Harden, the craftiest offensive talent in the game's history. Because in those same 8 seasons, Harden led the league in shooting fouls drawn and free throws attempted in 7 of them. It wasn't the most entertaining basketball, accused of being hard to watch or disrespecting the unwritten rules of the game. But it was effective. Or was it? The Rockets made the playoffs in each of Harden's 8 seasons. But you could argue 0 titles is a poor return. The story of the Harden era in Houston really begins with Morey's appointment in May 2007. Those pre-Harden years were marked by the dying days of the Yao Ming and Tracy McGrady tandem, and a brief Kevin Martin and Louis Scola interregnum that marked the only 3 times a Morey team missed the playoffs. That was part of a rebuild in which Morey collected assets aimed at securing a star. He totally dismantled the team in 2012 in his pursuit of Dwight Howard, who at the time defended shots at the rim better than anyone, only to come up empty. But in the lead up to the next season, opportunity knocked. Harden had just been named 6th Man of the Year on a Thunder team that went to the finals, but OKC balked at giving him a max contract. Seeing him as that foundational player, Morey sent a package including Martin for Harden and did indeed give him the max.
We actually, I didn't think they'd trade him. I think he's a great player. I think already playing at an all-star level and is going to be a perennial all-star. So those players are rarely traded. So I thought, frankly, it was going to work out there.
The beard quickly began to prove Morey right, scoring 26 points a game and leading the Rockets to the 8th seed, though they were dumped out by his former team. Then Howard signed as a free agent, and the Rockets began to fire. 54 wins in Dwight's first season, though they were sent home in the first round of the playoffs by an early dose of Dame time. 56 wins the next year, and this time they went to the conference finals, only to be beaten by the eventual champion Warriors. Then it fell apart. Coach Kevin McHale was fired after a 4-7 start, and on the way out, blamed Harden for showing up out of shape. Not the last time you heard that. And Howard was reportedly unhappy with being a bit part in Harden's one-man show, and that would definitely be a recurring theme. The Rockets snuck into the 8th seed, were cannon fodder for the 73-win Warriors, and Howard left to sign for Atlanta. Then D'Antoni arrived as coach, and the Rockets were rejuvenated. Houston steered hard into its strength, namely Harden, moving him to point guard, letting him play in isolation and surrounding him with shooters. Harden averaged 29 and 11 assists. though he ultimately came out on the wrong end of the MVP battle with Russell Westbrook, and the Rockets won 55 games. But they were beaten in the second round of the playoffs by the Spurs, Harden with a season-low 10 points in the elimination game.
I mean, I really just didn't have a rhythm beginning of the game. I feel like I was making some passes and we just didn't knock down shots or whatever the case may be. But as a team, as a unit, we really didn't have a rhythm, and they capitalized on that.
The narrative was forming that Harden didn't show up in big playoff games. It's not that he hadn't had bad postseason games before. 12 turnovers to go with only 14 points when the Warriors closed them out 2 years earlier stands out. But they had been underdogs then. Now it was becoming a problem. Speaking of the Warriors, that was the first season of Kevin Durant making Golden State scarier than ever. But Morey wasn't daunted. He swung again, this time trading for surefire Hall of Fame point guard Chris Paul.
You know, it's a guards-based league. You know, it's a weapons race in the NBA, and you're either in the weapons race or on the sidelines. And, you know, we felt like this is, with James Harden in his prime and Chris Paul in his prime, you know, this gives us a real shot to chase, you know, the juggernaut teams that are out there.
I think Ricky Bobby said it best: if you're not first, you last. Right? All right, shoot it up.
I just know how he can make me better, you know, on the court, but off the court as well, because it's gonna be intense. It's gonna be intense.
That intensity meant they would eventually clash. And when you consider CP3's famous work ethic versus Harden's famous love of strip clubs, that's not shocking. But at least on the court, it worked. The Rockets went 65-17. And Harden, with the richest contract in NBA history in his back pocket, averaged 30 points and 9 assists, including the first ever 60-point triple-double when beating the Magic. And this time, he got the MVP.
The last 4 years has been like, you know, knocking on the door. Now the moment is finally here, and just to be holding that trophy finally means a lot.
The Rockets rolled through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs and then went 3-2 up on the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. But with just 30 seconds left in Game 5, Paul hurt his hamstring and missed the last 2 games. The Rockets still held double-digit leads in both, but were blown out in Game 6 by a typical Klay Thompson Game 6 performance. And in Game 7, missed 27 straight threes as the Warriors moved on towards another title.
They were devastated. And just guys thought we were so close. We had it. We thought we had it. We had the first half, and in the 6th game, we had this half.
As for Harden, he's 32 in each of those last 2 games. An average of 29 for the series wasn't awful at first glance, but his shooting was, hitting just 24% of his threes. Houston reloaded, but it never got so good again. Paul re-signed with the team for a 4-year max contract, but his numbers went down as his relationship with Harden fell to pieces. And while Harden himself elevated his scoring to an amazing 36 per night, including 32 straight games scoring over 30, 53 wins, and then another exit at the hands of the Warriors around earlier this time, spelled the end of that duo's mini era. Harden at least hadn't flunked that postseason, but CP3 was seen as a spent force, and his contract was looking like one of the worst in the league, almost untradeable. Still, Morey was able to move it for former MVP Russell Westbrook, sending out Paul 2 first-round picks and 2 pick swaps. A hefty price at the time, and looking worse with hindsight. Though reportedly Harden and owner Tillman Fertitta were pushing that trade more than Morey.
When things aren't going great, you got to come even closer together. And that's, I think, one of the things that we were missing last year.
There was already the feeling that Morey wouldn't be around when that bill came due. And it only grew stronger when the GM sent his infamous tweet in support of Hong Kong protesters that so angered China. Speaking of anger, the reunion of Harden with his former OKC teammate and childhood friend Westbrook didn't quite work out. Westbrook reportedly just the latest to get fed up with Harden's partying. There came one final Morey swing mid-season. D'Antoni had regretted not trusting his instincts when his 7 seconds or less Phoenix Suns were winning small but falling short in the playoffs. If you think something's right and the numbers prove it's right, then go all in, D'Antoni said. You can't muddy the waters, can't just go halfway. So the Rockets went all in on small ball by trading starting centre Clint Capella for forward Robert Covington and playing 6'5" PJ Tucker in the middle. The end result, though, was little different than previous years. 44-28 in the coronavirus-affected season and a second-round playoff exit in the bubble, where they were outsized by the Lakers. It's easy to say small ball didn't work. On the other hand, it did no worse than any other strategy. And that was that. D'Antoni left after the season. Morey left too, bringing to a close his 13 years with the team. Westbrook, frustrated at the free rein they had given Harden, asked for a trade and got it, landing in DC. And the Beard himself, with his empire crumbling around him, also wanted out. At first, new GM Raphael Stone wouldn't budge. But when Harden missed the start of training camp to go partying, showed up overweight, and then loafed to start the season, a move had to be made.
We're just not good enough. We don't. Obviously, chemistry, talent-wise, just everything. And I love this city. I literally, done everything that I can. This situation is crazy. It's something that I don't think can be fixed. So, thanks.
A 4-team deal, which landed the Rockets a few picks to help replace the ones frittered away to build around Harden, saw him move to Brooklyn to join Kyrie and KD, and drew the curtain on that era of Houston basketball. How do you judge it? In the hard currency of championships, 0 is a fail. But for Morey, bringing Harden in at all was a home run. And his analytics bent finding its way across the league gives him a legacy few non-players could hope to have. For Harden, being the centerpiece in a team that makes the playoffs every year has to be a success. He too will be remembered, not for the playoff failures, but the incredible statistical feats that had him mentioned in the same breath as Wilt Chamberlain and Michael Jordan. That has to be worth something. After all, isn't making your mark what it's all about?